The morning sun cast long shadows across the Iraqi desert as Lieutenant Jake Morrison crouched behind a weathered concrete barrier, scanning the horizon through his rifle scope. 6 months into his deployment with SEAL Team 5, he had learned to read the desert's moods like a native. Today felt different. The usual sounds were absent. No distant goat bells, no children's voices from the nearby village, not even the persistent buzz of flies that typically plagued their operations. "Something's off," Morrison whispered into his comm, adjusting his position slightly. His spotter, Petty Officer First Class Carlos Mendez, lay prone beside him, eyes glued to his own optics. "Copy that, Lieutenant. Village has been too quiet since we inserted," Mendez replied, his voice barely audible even through the encrypted channel. "Even the dogs stopped barking 20 minutes ago." Their mission seemed straightforward on paper: observe and report on suspected weapons cache locations in the remote settlement of Al-Qadir, 30 kilometers southwest of Fallujah. Intelligence indicated that insurgent forces had been using the village as a staging area for attacks on coalition convoys traveling the main supply route. What should have been a routine reconnaissance operation now felt like walking into a carefully laid trap. Morrison shifted his weight, feeling the familiar bite of desert grit against his exposed skin. Behind him, the rest of his 8-man squad maintained overwatch positions along the ridgeline, each SEAL responsible for a specific sector of fire. Petty Officer Second Class Danny Kim monitored radio traffic from their temporary command post, while Hospital Corpsman Second Class Mike Torres kept medical supplies ready and weapons systems checks current. "Overwatch 1 to base," Morrison spoke into his headset, establishing contact with their forward operating base. "We're in position. Grid reference 38S MD 147-298. Village appears deserted. Request permission to advance for closer reconnaissance." The response crackled through after a brief delay. "Base to Overwatch 1. Negative on advancement. Maintain current position and observe. Higher command reports increased chatter in your area. Stay frosty." Morrison grimaced. Higher command's intelligence often lagged behind ground truth by several hours, sometimes days. If there was indeed increased enemy communication in their area, his team needed to know specifics: numbers, locations, capabilities. The vague warning did little more than confirm what his instincts already told him. "Rodriguez, what's your sector looking like?" Morrison called to his point man, who had taken position on the team's left flank. "All quiet, Lieutenant, but I've got fresh tire tracks leading into the village from the northeast. Heavy vehicle, probably a truck. Tracks are maybe 6 hours old, judging by the sand drift." This information added another piece to the puzzle. Fresh vehicle traffic into a supposedly empty village suggested either civilians had fled recently or new occupants had arrived. Neither scenario boded well for their mission. Morrison studied the village layout through his scope. 43 buildings clustered around a central courtyard, with narrow alleys connecting family compounds. Adobe construction with flat roofs provided excellent defensive positions and multiple escape routes. The settlement's layout favored defenders who knew the terrain, creating natural choke points and killing fields that would funnel attacking forces into predetermined zones. "Kim, any updates on that radio chatter?" Morrison asked their communication specialist. "Negative on specific content, Lieutenant. Still encrypted, but frequency and intensity have picked up in the last 30 minutes. Someone's coordinating something down there." The pieces were falling into place in Morrison's mind. Empty village, fresh vehicle tracks, increased radio communications, and an unsettling silence that felt more orchestrated than natural. His team was walking into an ambush, or at minimum, an area where hostile forces were actively operating with confidence. "Mendez, range to the village center?" 870 meters, his spotter replied without hesitation. "Light wind from the southeast, maybe 5 knots. Temperature's climbing, so we'll start getting heat shimmer in another hour." Morrison nodded. processing the tactical information. At just under 900 meters, they were within effective range for precision rifle fire, but far enough away to avoid most small arms. The positioning gave them options: observe safely, provide overwatch for a closer reconnaissance team, or establish a sniper hide for long-range support. "Movement," Mendez said sharply. "Building 7, second-floor window. Someone just moved past the opening." Morrison swung his scope to the designated building, a 2-story structure on the village's eastern edge. The window in question remained empty, but the shadows inside seemed darker than they should be. Someone was definitely there, deliberately staying out of sight. "Confirmed. We've got active personnel in the village," Morrison reported to his team. "Everyone maintain positions and keep eyes open. This just became a reconnaissance of hostile territory." As if responding to his words, a thin wisp of dust rose from a building on the opposite side of the village. Then another, and another. Morrison felt his heart rate climb as the implications became clear. Multiple positions were being occupied simultaneously, and whoever was down there was doing it with military precision. "Lieutenant, I've got thermal signatures in at least 6 buildings," reported Petty Officer 3rd Class Austin Hayes from his position with the team's thermal imaging equipment. "Looks like 12 to 15 individuals, all moving with purpose. These aren't civilians." Morrison's jaw tightened. 15 hostiles in a fortified village with prepared positions. His 8-man team suddenly felt very small. "Kim, get on the horn to base. We need immediate support options and extraction procedures. This isn't a simple weapons cache operation anymore." While Kim established communications, Morrison continued studying the village through his optics. The enemy's positioning showed sophisticated tactical knowledge. They had chosen buildings that provided overlapping fields of fire, multiple escape routes, and natural cover from aerial observation. More concerning, they seemed to know exactly where his team was positioned. "Base to Overwatch 1, Kim relayed the response. "Closest support is 30 minutes out. Apache gunship and quick reaction force standing by at Camp Liberty. You're cleared to engage if threatened, but maintain observation posture if possible." 30 minutes might as well be 30 hours in a firefight. Morrison knew his team would need to rely on their training, positioning, and superior equipment if things went sideways. The SEALs had advantages: better optics, precision weapons, communications, and tactical expertise, but numbers and defensive positions strongly favored the enemy. "Torres, how's our medical supplies?" Morrison asked their corpsman. "Full loadout, Lieutenant. Trauma kits, morphine, blood clotting agents, and enough supplies for multiple casualties. But I'd rather not test the inventory." Morrison appreciated Torres's dark humor, but the corpsman's readiness provided genuine comfort. In special operations, medical preparedness often determined mission success and personnel survival. Torres had proven his skills in previous engagements, treating both friendly and enemy wounded under fire. "Movement again," Mendez reported. "Same building, but now I'm seeing someone on the roof. Looks like they're setting up some kind of equipment." Morrison tracked to the location and immediately felt his blood chill. A figure in civilian clothing was positioning what appeared to be a high-powered rifle with a substantial scope. The weapon's profile suggested serious long-range capability, far exceeding typical insurgent small arms. "That's a sniper rifle," Morrison said grimly, "and whoever's behind it knows what they're doing. Look at the positioning. Perfect angle on our ridgeline, solid cover, multiple exit routes." The tactical situation had just shifted dramatically. A skilled sniper with proper equipment could engage his team effectively at their current range. The SEAL's position, chosen for observation and overwatch, suddenly felt exposed and vulnerable. "Kim, update base immediately. We have confirmed hostile sniper in prepared position with direct line of sight to our location, requesting immediate tactical guidance." While Kim transmitted the update, Morrison began calculating options. Moving would expose his team to observation and potential fire. Staying put meant accepting a standoff with an unknown shooter whose capabilities remained unclear. Advancing would walk them into a kill zone designed specifically for their destruction. Rodriguez, can you identify any other sniper positions? Negative so far, Lieutenant. But if they've got one professional shooter, they probably have more. I'm seeing too much coordination down there for a single operator. Morrison's mind raced through possibilities. Professional snipers rarely operated alone, especially in prepared positions. The enemy had likely established multiple shooting positions with overlapping coverage, ensuring no dead space where his team could maneuver safely. Hayes, what's the thermal showing now? More movement, Lieutenant. Looks like they're taking final positions. I count at least 18 signatures now, with 3 definite sniper teams based on their positioning and equipment profiles. 3 sniper teams. Morrison felt his mouth go dry. Against a single shooter, his team had excellent chances. Against 3 coordinated professionals with prepared positions, home field advantage, and time to plan, the odds shifted dramatically. Base to Overwatch 1, Kim relayed urgently. Higher command confirms intelligence gap in your area. Recent SIGINT suggests highly trained foreign fighters, possibly former military, have established operations in your sector. You are cleared for immediate extraction if situation becomes untenable. Foreign fighters with military training explained the professional setup they were observing. Former soldiers from various conflicts had been filtering into Iraq, bringing advanced skills and equipment that far exceeded typical insurgent capabilities. These weren't farmers with AK-47s. They were trained killers with modern weapons and tactical knowledge. Morrison weighed his options carefully. Extraction would mean mission failure and leave the enemy position intact for future operations. But staying meant accepting a potentially catastrophic engagement against superior numbers in prepared positions. His responsibility to his men ultimately trumped mission objectives. Prepare for tactical withdrawal, Morrison decided. We'll displace by teams, maintaining overwatch while... The crack of a high-powered rifle shattered the desert silence. Chunks of concrete exploded from the barrier inches from Morrison's head, showering him with debris. The shot had been impossibly precise, close enough to be a clear warning rather than a miss. "Sniper!" Mendez shouted unnecessarily. Everyone had heard the distinctive sound of a precision rifle engagement. Morrison's training kicked in immediately. "Stay down. Nobody move until we identify the shooter's position." But even as he issued orders, Morrison realized their situation had become desperate. The sniper hadn't missed. The shot had been a message. "We can kill you any time we choose." The psychological warfare was as effective as any bullet, designed to create panic and force hasty decisions that would turn a bad situation catastrophic. "Kim, emergency extraction now! We need immediate support!" The desert had become a death trap, and Morrison's team was caught in the center of it, outgunned and outpositioned by an enemy who had been planning this engagement far longer than anyone in intelligence had suspected. The quiet morning had erupted into every special operations soldier's nightmare, a prepared ambush by skilled professionals with superior positioning. As Morrison pressed himself against the concrete barrier, feeling the heat of the desert sun on his back and the cold reality of their situation settling in, he knew the next few minutes would determine whether his team would make it home alive. The sniper in the sand had just announced that the hunt had begun, and the SEALs had suddenly become the prey. Morrison's mind raced as he calculated firing angles and potential sniper positions. The shot had come from the village, but pinpointing the exact location required movement that could prove fatal. His team remained pinned behind inadequate cover, facing an enemy who clearly held every advantage. "Sound discipline," Morrison whispered into his comm. "That shooter's listening for our voices to triangulate positions. Hand signals only unless absolutely necessary." Mendez nodded silently, his eyes never leaving his scope. Through careful observation, he was attempting to identify muzzle flash positions, dust signatures, or any telltale signs that would reveal the sniper's location. Professional shooters rarely left obvious traces, but even experts occasionally made small mistakes under pressure. Morrison used hand signals to direct his team's attention to potential firing positions. Building 7 remained suspicious, but the shot could have originated from multiple locations given the village's layout. Without positive identification, returning fire would waste ammunition and reveal their positions to other enemy shooters. "Torres," Morrison whispered, barely audible. "Anyone hit?" The corpsman had already begun checking team members through subtle visual inspection. "All green, Lieutenant. That shot was either a warning or the shooter made an error." Morrison knew professional snipers rarely made errors at 800 meters. The near miss had been deliberate, designed to create psychological pressure and force his team into reactive rather than proactive decisions. Classic psychological warfare tactics employed by skilled marksmen who understood that fear often accomplished more than actual casualties. Another rifle crack split the desert air, this time followed immediately by the distinctive whine of a bullet passing overhead. The round impacted somewhere behind their position, again close enough to be threatening without causing actual harm. The second shot confirmed Morrison's assessment. They were being toyed with by someone who could have killed them already. Kim's radio crackled with an urgent transmission from base. "Overwatch 1. We show multiple thermal signatures converging on your position. Count indicates 20-plus hostiles moving through concealed approaches. ETA for support is still 25 minutes. The tactical picture was deteriorating rapidly. Not only were they facing multiple sniper teams, but additional enemy forces were maneuvering to surround their position. Morrison realized his team had walked into a carefully orchestrated ambush that had likely been planned for days or weeks. "Hayes, thermal update," Morrison requested through barely moving lips. Hayes studied his equipment carefully before responding in the faintest whisper. "Confirmed movement in dead space to our northwest and southeast. Looks like classic pincer movement. They're trying to box us in." Morrison's training had covered this exact scenario multiple times. Enemy forces were using the sniper teams to fix his squad in position while assault elements maneuvered for close-range engagement. The psychological pressure of precision fire would keep the SEALs pinned while overwhelming numbers eliminated them systematically. "Rodriguez, can you identify any weakness in their positioning?" Rodriguez had been studying the village layout through his own optics, looking for tactical opportunities. "Negative on obvious weaknesses, Lieutenant, but there's a dry creek bed running northeast from our position. Provides concealment for about 400 meters before it opens into flat ground." The creek bed offered potential escape route, but using it would require coordinated movement under hostile observation. Professional snipers would have already identified likely withdrawal routes and prepared accordingly. Moving through the creek bed could lead directly into a kill zone. Morrison weighed his rapidly diminishing options. Staying put meant eventual encirclement and destruction by superior numbers. Moving meant exposing his team to sniper fire and possible ambush positions. Calling for extraction might bring aircraft into a prepared anti-aircraft kill zone. Every choice carried enormous risk. "Kim, request immediate intelligence update on anti-aircraft capabilities in this area. Also need confirmation on extraction LZ security." While Kim transmitted the request, another shot rang out, this time from a different position. The bullet struck within feet of Hayes' thermal imaging equipment, sending up a spray of sand and rock fragments. The shooter had deliberately targeted their most valuable piece of reconnaissance gear. "They're trying to blind us," Mendez observed quietly. "Take out our optics, then move in for the kill." Morrison nodded grimly. The enemy's tactical approach showed sophisticated understanding of special operations procedures. By eliminating the team's surveillance capabilities, they would force the SEALs to rely on basic visual observation, significantly reducing their ability to detect incoming threats. Torres, start prepping for movement. If we're going to displace, we need to do it before they complete their encirclement. The corpsman began subtle preparations, ensuring medical supplies were secure and easily accessible during potential movement. His actions were deliberately small and natural-looking, designed to avoid drawing sniper attention to their growing desperation. A fourth shot impacted directly between Morrison and Mendez, showering both men with concrete fragments and dust. The precision was unnerving, close enough to cause genuine fear, but calculated to avoid actual casualties. Morrison began to suspect the enemy wanted his team alive for interrogation purposes. "Base to Overwatch 1, Kim relayed urgently. "Intelligence confirms advanced anti-aircraft systems reported in your sector. Extraction options limited until threat assessment complete. You're cleared to engage and maneuver as necessary for survival." The news confirmed Morrison's worst fears. His team was truly isolated, facing professional enemy forces with advanced equipment and tactical knowledge. Support elements couldn't assist without risking additional casualties, leaving 8 SEALs alone against overwhelming odds. Morrison made his decision. "Prepare for tactical withdrawal. Rodriguez and Hayes provide overwatch. Kim and Torres move in bounds toward the creek bed. Mendez and I will cover your movement, then follow." The plan was dangerous but necessary. By moving in small teams while maintaining overwatch, they could potentially break contact before the enemy completed their encirclement. Success depended on speed, coordination, and perhaps most importantly, the enemy's willingness to let them go. "Wait for my signal," Morrison whispered. "When I say move, don't hesitate. Speed and aggression are our only advantages now." Morrison watched his team prepare for what might be their final action. Each SEAL checked weapons, adjusted equipment, and prepared mentally for the dangerous movement ahead. Their training had prepared them for this moment, but preparation and execution under hostile fire were entirely different challenges. "Hayes, final thermal count?" 26 signatures now, Lieutenant. They've got us almost completely surrounded. The creek bed might be our only option, but I can't guarantee it's clear." Morrison acknowledged the information while calculating timing. Once they began moving, stealth would be impossible. The enemy would detect their movement immediately, forcing his team to rely on speed and covering fire to reach the creek bed alive. "Rodriguez, can you identify the primary sniper position?" "Building 7, second floor, northwest corner window. That's where the last 3 shots originated. I can engage on your command." Morrison considered authorizing immediate suppressive fire, but shooting would reveal Rodriguez's position to other enemy snipers. The trade-off might eliminate one threat while creating multiple new ones. Professional shooters rarely operated without backup and coordination. Another shot cracked across the desert, this time striking Hayes's thermal equipment directly. Sparks flew as expensive electronics shattered under the impact of high-velocity ammunition. The enemy had successfully eliminated their most advanced surveillance capability. "They're getting ready to move," Mendez observed. "Blinding us first, then closing distance for final assault." Morrison knew Mendez was correct. The systematic elimination of their equipment indicated preparation for close-range engagement. Enemy assault teams were likely moving into final positions, waiting for the signal to overwhelm his position through coordinated attack. "That's it. We move now or we don't move at all," Morrison decided. "Rodriguez, put suppressive fire on Building 7. Everyone else move to the creek bed in pairs. Go!" Rodriguez immediately began engaging the suspected sniper position with rapid, accurate fire. His rounds impacted the building's window and surrounding structure, forcing the enemy shooter to take cover and disrupting their ability to observe the SEAL team's movement. Kim and Torres sprinted toward the creek bed, covering the distance in seconds while maintaining tactical spacing. Their movement drew immediate attention from multiple enemy positions, as evidenced by the sudden increase in incoming fire from various locations throughout the village. Morrison and Mendez followed, providing covering fire while moving in bounds toward the creek bed. Bullets whined past their position, striking the ground around them with increasing accuracy as enemy shooters adjusted their aim. The professional nature of the opposition became even more apparent under fire. Their shooting was disciplined, accurate, and coordinated. "Contact left!" Hayes shouted as movement appeared in the dead space to their northwest. Enemy assault teams were emerging from concealment, attempting to cut off the SEAL team's withdrawal route. The timing indicated sophisticated coordination between sniper teams and ground assault elements. The creek bed was still 50 meters away when Morrison realized their tactical situation had become impossible. Enemy forces had anticipated their movement and positioned accordingly. The SEALs were caught in open ground with minimal cover, facing multiple threats from prepared positions. "Suppressive fire, all positions!" Morrison ordered. "Keep their heads down while we reach the creek bed." His team responded immediately with disciplined burst fire from multiple weapons, creating enough incoming rounds to force enemy shooters into cover. The tactic bought precious seconds, but couldn't be sustained indefinitely with their limited ammunition supply. Torres reached the creek bed first, immediately taking position to provide covering fire for the rest of the team. Kim joined him moments later, his radio equipment still functional despite the chaos around them. Their position offered genuine concealment for the first time since the engagement began. Morrison and Mendez were the last to reach the creek bed, arriving under increasingly heavy fire as enemy forces adjusted to their new positions. The natural depression provided excellent cover from direct fire, but also created potential trap if enemy forces could position themselves along the creek bed's length. "Sound off," Morrison ordered once everyone had reached relative safety. Each team member reported their condition in turn. Despite the intensity of the engagement, no one had been seriously injured. Their equipment had taken damage, but all personnel remained combat effective. The professional nature of their training and the enemy's apparent desire to avoid casualties had combined to keep everyone alive. "Kim, can you reach base from here?" "Affirmative, Lieutenant. Creek bed provides good communications cover. What's your message?" Morrison considered his options while listening to enemy forces repositioning in the village. They had achieved temporary safety, but their situation remained desperate. The creek bed offered concealment, but limited their movement options significantly. Enemy forces knew their location and were undoubtedly moving to exploit their new position. "Tell base we've broken initial contact, but remain under observation by professional enemy forces. Request immediate tactical assessment of creek bed route and alternative extraction procedures. Also need ammunition resupply if we're going to hold this position." While Kim transmitted the message, Morrison studied the creek bed's geography. The depression extended northeast for approximately 400 meters before opening into flat desert. Enemy forces could easily position themselves along the route, creating multiple ambush points that would be impossible to detect or avoid. "Torres, how long can we hold here with current ammunition?" The corpsmen had been conducting tactical assessment while providing medical oversight. "Maybe 30 minutes of sustained contact, Lieutenant. After that, we'll be down to personal defense weapons and limited ammunition." Morrison nodded grimly. 30 minutes wasn't enough time for extraction or reinforcement. His team would need to create opportunities rather than wait for external assistance. The enemy's professional approach suggested they understood this timeline as well, likely planning their next assault accordingly. The desert sun continued climbing, adding heat stress to their tactical problems. In a few hours, temperatures would become a significant factor in their decision-making process. Dehydration and heat exhaustion would degrade their combat effectiveness, giving the enemy additional advantages beyond numbers and positioning. "Movement to our rear," Rodriguez reported from his overwatch position. "Looks like they're trying to get behind us in the creek bed." Morrison's heart sank. If enemy forces could access the creek bed behind their position, his team would be trapped with no escape routes. The natural cover that had saved them was becoming a death trap, exactly as the enemy had probably anticipated. "Mendez, can you see any other options from here?" The spotter had been studying the terrain ahead through his optics, looking for tactical opportunities. "There's a small ridge line about 600 meters northeast. Might provide better defensive positions, but we'd have to cross open ground to reach it." 600 meters of open ground under hostile observation meant certain casualties, possibly total team destruction. Morrison realized his options were rapidly disappearing as enemy forces tightened their tactical noose around his position. The situation had become a nightmare scenario from special operations training. Isolated, outnumbered, outgunned, and caught in terrain that favored the enemy. Morrison's team faced the ultimate test of their training, leadership, and will to survive against impossible odds. As enemy voices grew closer in the creek bed behind them, Morrison knew the next few minutes would determine whether his SEALs would fight their way to safety or make their last stand in an Iraqi desert that had already claimed too many American lives. Morrison's mind shifted into the cold calculation that had carried him through previous combat situations. Panic was a luxury his team couldn't afford. Every decision in the next few minutes would determine whether 8 SEALs would return home or become another casualty statistic in an increasingly complex conflict. "Torres, prep smoke grenades. Rodriguez and Hayes, establish firing positions covering our 6. Kim, get me a direct line to any air assets in the region, official or otherwise." His team responded with the smooth coordination that years of training had ingrained. No questions, no hesitation, just professional execution under pressure. Morrison felt a surge of pride, even in their desperate circumstances. These men represented the pinnacle of military training and dedication. "Kim to Lieutenant," the radio operator whispered. "I've got a Marine Cobra pilot on emergency frequency. Call sign Viper 2-1. He's running low on fuel but has 20 minutes of station time and full weapons load." Morrison's tactical mind immediately began calculating possibilities. A Marine attack helicopter could change the engagement dramatically, but only if they could properly coordinate without fratricide. Enemy forces would certainly have contingency plans for air support, possibly including surface-to-air missiles that intelligence had already confirmed in the area. "Viper 2-1, this is Overwatch 1. We have 8 friendly personnel trapped in creek bed, grid reference 38S MD 148-299. Multiple hostiles with professional capabilities surrounding our position. Can you provide immediate close air support?" The pilot's response came quickly through Kim's equipment. "Overwatch 1, Viper 2-1. I can see your position and confirm multiple heat signatures closing on your location. Be advised, I'm showing possible SAM sites in the village. We'll need to approach from low angle to avoid acquisition." Morrison felt his first glimmer of hope since the engagement began. Marine pilots were renowned for their willingness to take risks supporting ground forces in trouble. If Viper 2-1 could neutralize even some of the threats surrounding his team, they might have a chance to break contact successfully. "Rodriguez, movement report?" "They're about 50 meters behind us in the creek bed, Lieutenant. Moving carefully but definitely closing distance. I estimate 4 to 6 personnel, all carrying automatic weapons." The tactical picture was becoming clearer. Enemy forces were executing a classic pincer movement, using the creek bed to approach from behind while sniper teams maintained overwatch from the village. Once the assault teams reached effective range, his squad would be caught in a devastating crossfire with no escape routes. "Hayes, what's your read on the thermal signatures ahead of us?" "Clear for about 200 meters. Then I'm seeing more movement. Looks like they've got teams positioned at the creek bed's exit point. We're boxed in, Lieutenant." Morrison absorbed this information while calculating their dwindling options. Behind them, assault teams approached through the creek bed. Ahead, enemy forces waited at the only viable exit route. Above, professional snipers maintained overwatch with direct lines of sight to their position. The tactical situation had become a textbook example of encirclement and annihilation. Viper 2-1. We need immediate engagement on village positions. Priority targets are sniper teams in buildings 7, 12, and 15. Secondary targets are assault elements approaching grid 38S MD 149-298. Roger, Overwatch 1. Beginning attack run. Keep your heads down and mark your position with smoke when you're ready to move. Morrison could hear the distinctive sound of rotor blades approaching from the southeast. The Marine pilot was coming in fast and low, using terrain features to mask his approach from potential surface-to-air threats. Professional helicopter pilots developed an intuitive understanding of ground threats and evasion tactics that kept them alive in hostile environments. Torres, pop smoke on my command. Everyone else prepare for immediate movement when the Cobra engages. We'll have maybe 30 seconds of confusion to cover significant distance. The enemy forces had undoubtedly heard the approaching helicopter and were adjusting their positions accordingly. Professional fighters would have contingency plans for air support, possibly including withdrawal routes and concealed positions that could protect them from aerial attack. Morrison's team needed to exploit the brief window of opportunity that close air support would provide. The first rockets impacted the village with devastating precision. Building 7 disappeared in a massive explosion that sent debris flying across the surrounding area. Secondary explosions suggested the structure had contained ammunition or explosive materials, confirming intelligence reports about weapons caches in the settlement. "Move now," Morrison ordered, simultaneously triggering Torres's smoke grenade to mark their position for the helicopter pilot. His team sprinted northeast through the creek bed while Viper 2-1 continued engaging targets in the village. The distinctive sound of 20mm cannon fire added to the chaos as the Marine pilot systematically eliminated sniper positions with surgical precision. Professional military aviation at its finest, providing exactly the support ground forces needed. Morrison could hear enemy forces behind them shouting orders in Arabic, their voices indicating confusion and possible panic as their carefully planned ambush disintegrated under aerial attack. The psychological impact of close air support often exceeded its physical effects, disrupting enemy coordination and decision-making processes. "Contact front," Rodriguez shouted as muzzle flashes appeared at the creek bed's exit point. Enemy forces positioned ahead had opened fire, attempting to prevent the SEAL team from escaping their kill zone. Morrison realized the enemy commander had anticipated air support and positioned accordingly, accepting losses in the village while maintaining personnel at critical choke points. "Suppressive fire forward. Hayes and Torres, alternate bounds toward that ridgeline." His team immediately began leapfrog movement, with 2 SEALs providing covering fire while the others advanced. The tactic required perfect coordination and mutual trust, as each pair depended completely on their teammates' accuracy and judgment. Morrison felt pride watching his men execute complex battle drills under extreme pressure. Viper 2-1 made another attack run, this time targeting the enemy positions at the creek bed exit. Rockets and cannon fire eliminated the immediate threat, but Morrison knew more enemy forces were likely positioned throughout the area. Professional opponents didn't rely on single positions or simple tactics. Viper 2-1 to Overwatch 1, I'm showing additional heat signatures moving toward your location from multiple directions. Estimate 20+ hostiles converging on the ridgeline you're approaching. My fuel state is becoming critical. Maybe 5 more minutes of station time. Morrison felt his temporary optimism fading. Even with air support, enemy forces maintained numerical superiority and tactical flexibility. The ridgeline they were approaching might provide defensive advantages, but could also become another trap if enemy forces could surround it effectively. Kim, any update on ground support or extraction options? Negative, Lieutenant. Quick Reaction Force is still 15 minutes out, and they're reporting heavy resistance en route. We might be on our own for a while longer. Morrison made another critical decision. His team couldn't continue running from one temporary position to another while enemy forces maintained initiative and numerical superiority. They needed to create a decisive tactical advantage or face gradual attrition until their position became impossible. Change of plans. We're going to use the ridgeline as a defensive position and make them come to us. Torres, how are we on ammunition and medical supplies? Still good on both, Lieutenant. We've been conserving rounds, and nobody's been seriously hit yet. The ridgeline offered genuine tactical advantages: elevation for observation and fields of fire, natural cover from approach routes, and positions that would allow his team to engage targets at range rather than close quarters. Professional training emphasized using terrain to multiply combat effectiveness. Rodriguez, can you identify primary approach routes to the ridgeline? 3 main avenues, Lieutenant. Creek bed from the south, open ground from the west, and scattered rocks from the northeast. We can cover all 3 approaches with proper positioning. Morrison began visualizing defensive positions as his team reached the ridge line. 8 SEALs with superior equipment, training, and positioning could hold off significantly larger numbers if they chose their battles carefully. The key would be forcing enemy forces to attack across open ground while maintaining ammunition conservation. Establish defensive perimeter. Rodriguez and Mendez take the southern approach covering the creek bed. Hayes and Torres cover western approaches. Kim and I will handle the northeast. Everyone maintains communication and ammunition discipline. Viper 2-1 made a final attack run before departing for fuel, targeting enemy forces that had emerged from the village in pursuit of the SEAL team. The Marine pilot's professionalism had provided crucial support at the most desperate moment, buying time and disrupting enemy coordination when Morrison's team needed it most. Thanks for the assist, Viper 2-1. Outstanding work. Roger. Overwatch 1. I'll be back with fuel and more ordnance in 45 minutes. Hold what you've got until then. As the helicopter departed, Morrison assessed their improved but still dangerous situation. His team held defensible terrain with adequate ammunition and supplies. Enemy forces remained numerous and professional, but had lost initiative and taken casualties from air support. The tactical balance had shifted, but remained precarious. Movement to the south, Mendez reported. Looks like they're probing our defensive positions, trying to determine our capabilities and positioning. Morrison expected professional enemy forces to conduct reconnaissance before launching coordinated attacks. Their previous tactics had shown sophisticated understanding of small unit operations and combined arms coordination. The ridgeline engagement would test both sides' training and tactical flexibility. Hold fire until they commit to an assault. We want them to reveal their full strength and positioning before engaging. Enemy forces spent nearly 20 minutes conducting careful reconnaissance, using concealment and observation techniques that confirmed their professional military background. Morrison watched them through his optics, noting their discipline, equipment, and tactical procedures. These weren't typical insurgents or local militia. Kim, get me another intelligence update on these guys. Their training and equipment levels suggest foreign military advisors or former Special Forces personnel. While Kim requested updated intelligence, enemy forces began their assault with precision mortar fire that impacted around the ridgeline's perimeter. The accuracy indicated forward observers with professional fire direction capabilities, adding another layer to the tactical challenge facing Morrison's team. Incoming indirect fire. Take cover. His team immediately sought protection in the rocky terrain while maintaining observation on enemy approach routes. Professional indirect fire support meant the enemy possessed capabilities that matched or exceeded typical insurgent forces. The engagement had evolved into conventional military operations rather than guerrilla warfare. The mortar barrage lasted 5 minutes before lifting, immediately followed by coordinated infantry assault from multiple directions. Morrison watched through his optics as enemy forces moved with textbook precision, using cover and concealment while maintaining tactical spacing and mutual support. Engage designated targets. Discipline your fire and make every round count. His team opened fire with devastating precision. Their superior marksmanship training immediately evident in the engagement results. Enemy forces took heavy casualties from the initial exchange, but continued advancing with determination that spoke to their professional training and commitment. "They're not breaking contact," Rodriguez observed. "These guys are committed to eliminating us regardless of casualties." Morrison realized the enemy's determination suggested this engagement had significance beyond simple tactical opportunity. Professional forces rarely accepted heavy casualties unless the objective warranted such sacrifice. His team had stumbled into something much larger than routine weapons cache surveillance. The firefight continued for another 20 minutes, with enemy forces making repeated assaults on the ridgeline positions, while Morrison's team maintained disciplined defensive fire. Professional training and superior positioning were proving decisive, but ammunition conservation remained a critical concern. "Kim, what's the status on that quick reaction force?" 5 minutes out, Lieutenant. They report contact with enemy blocking positions but are fighting through to reach us." Morrison felt genuine relief for the first time since the engagement began. Professional reinforcement would tip the tactical balance decisively in favor of American forces. His team's survival was no longer in doubt. They had held long enough for help to arrive. As if responding to the approaching reinforcements, enemy forces began withdrawing from their assault positions with the same professional discipline they had demonstrated throughout the engagement. Morrison watched them disappear into terrain features and concealment, with grudging respect for their capabilities. "Cease fire, they're withdrawing. Conserve ammunition and maintain observation." The sudden silence felt surreal after hours of intense combat. Morrison's team had survived a professional ambush through superior training, equipment, coordination, and, perhaps most importantly, leadership under pressure. Every SEAL had performed magnificently when survival depended on collective excellence. "Sound off," Morrison ordered. "Give me status reports." Each team member reported their condition and ammunition status. Despite the intensity of the engagement, casualties had been limited to minor cuts and bruises from flying debris. Their equipment had performed flawlessly, and ammunition supplies remained adequate for continued operations. The quick reaction force arrived 15 minutes later, providing the additional firepower and personnel that guaranteed tactical security. Morrison watched professional soldiers establish perimeter positions while medics checked his team for injuries or combat stress indicators. "Outstanding work, Lieutenant," the QRF commander said as he approached Morrison's position. "Intelligence indicates you engaged a battalion-sized element of foreign fighters with advanced training and equipment. 8 SEALs held off professional opposition that should have overrun your position easily." Morrison looked back at his team, who were conducting equipment checks and preparing for extraction. These men had proven themselves under impossible circumstances, demonstrating the elite training and dedication that defined naval special warfare. They had faced professional military forces and prevailed through superior tactics, marksmanship, and unshakable teamwork. As helicopters arrived for extraction, Morrison reflected on the engagement's broader implications. Professional enemy forces with advanced capabilities were operating in Iraq with coordination and equipment that suggested significant external support. This morning's ambush had revealed a much more serious threat than routine insurgent activity. But his immediate concern was getting his team home safely. They had survived their most serious combat engagement through training, teamwork, and tactical excellence that represented the best of American Special Operations Forces. The sniper in the sand dunes had learned that SEALs don't panic. They adapt, overcome, and accomplish their mission regardless of the odds against them.